Well, good morning and welcome to the 2023 Disability in North Carolina Wellness at Work event. Thank you to Novant and MetLife for sponsoring today's event. My name is Beth Butler Fatal, Executive Director of Disability in North Carolina. Our focus today is preventative healthcare and healthy lifestyles at work. Through today's event, we invite you to listen and learn from the lived experiences of our presenters, things that you and your employer may do to promote healthier workplace and lifestyles. And now I will turn the program over to Chantel Liu, one of our newest board members from MetLife, who will introduce today's keynote speaker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chantel Liu, and I'm the Vice President of Risk and Security Assurance for MetLife. And I've recently joined as a board member for Disability in North Carolina. I'm thrilled about that. Wellness at work is such an important topic. For me personally, wellness at work means taking care of myself first, because only then can I serve everyone else and I'm able to bring my whole self to work. It means that I need to look after myself, both at home and at work, physically, emotionally, socially. Am I being active enough? Honestly, sometimes I stumble there. Am I sleeping enough? Am I eating well? Do I surround myself with meaningful relationships? And do I have an awareness of what triggers increased stress and manage this accordingly? As I said, this is important both at home and in the workplace. With that, I am truly honored and excited that we have Ali Ingersoll here today as our keynote speaker. Ali is a day trader, disability strategy consultant, Miss Wheelchair America 2023, writer and public speaker. Ali's professional passion lies in coaching organizations on how to strategically create and implement disability inclusive policies and practices within the organization, from C-suite leaders to employee resource groups. She accomplishes this through teaching how to minimize bias, increase advocacy, accountability, access, and inclusion internally. Today, Ali will be talking about her experience with preventative healthcare and how companies might look at inclusion for all in the workforce. Following that, we will moderate a session, a question and answer session with Ali. So everyone out there, feel free to add your questions to the chat throughout her presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to warmly welcome Ali.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. So I gave a lot of thought about wellness at work in the corporate setting, especially as it relates to DEI. And I was thinking that we really need to go back a little bit to dissect what the D, the E, and the I mean, and add on belonging to that. So we know that it's quite well established that DEI is a foundational component to the success of any business, right? There's solid evidence and research that's been conducted to make the business case for DEI to increase engagement, productivity, return on investment. But when I think about DEI, the final element, inclusion, it really goes beneath the surface of who we are and the structures in which we exist. It's all about what we do. Inclusion, in a word, comes down to behaviors. So one could argue that inclusion truly is a linchpin of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you have an inclusive organization, you will naturally attract a more diverse workforce and more equitable practices. So inclusive behaviors can be defined as the actions that make others feel valued, respected, seen, and heard. So let's take belonging. So when I think about what really brings DEI full circle, it's this concept of belonging, which is really important when it comes to wellness and preventative care. It's the feeling that one's authentic self is valued, seen, respected, and heard. It's really the crux of inclusion and is consequently being added to the DEI acronym. So oftentimes I'm seeing now in the landscape today that belonging gets lumped into inclusion in terms of getting used interchangeably. I think this is a grave mistake. So inclusion refers to behaviors, while belonging is a feeling that is an outcome of inclusive behaviors. So for the purposes of today, we're going to be talking about how to improve a sense of belonging in the corporate world for employees through the lens of wellness and preventative care, which is often left out of the conversation for so many organizations. Although many organizations are increasingly making this a priority in their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. We constantly hear of DEI, diversity, pay equity, identity, but what about wellness? Wellness from different angles, and what that means for different identity groups within an employee population. So I want to shift gears a moment. This is, after all, a wellness and preventative care chat on Disability In. So let's think about disability. Disability really is part of the human experience. The disability activist, late disability activist, Hale Zukas, he famously exclaimed that anyone without a disability is temporarily able-bodied. Think about that. Have you broken your arm? Have you had high cholesterol? Who hasn't suffered from seasonal mental anxiety or depression? These are all temporary disabilities. Some are permanent. Every one of you is going to join this club for some reason at some point in your life, even if it's, quote, just getting older, right? So you have to think about what accommodations in society, in your personal life, in the corporate setting, are you taking from self-care, and how are your employers working with you on these programs? I find that people with disabilities face some with their own personal challenges are some of the most creative problem solvers, and they apply that kind of flexibility that is required for organizations to really thrive in ever-changing times. So employers are hiring people with disabilities if they benefit from a wider pool of talent, skills, creative business solutions. There are dozens of reports out there, and Disability In did one as well, to showcase how people with disabilities are really helping to improve the bottom line of businesses, because at the end of the day, there needs to be a business case, but it has to come down to belonging. So 1 in 4 people have a disability on this planet. That's over 1 billion people on the planet that we know of. 15% of the world's population. That's 26% of Americans that live with a disability in some capacity or another. What I find really interesting is that 80% of these disabilities are unseen. 8 out of 10 of you will acquire a disability at some point in your life. 91% of these are chronic illnesses and only 9% from traumatic accidents. That still represents about 30% of the labor force of people comprising of disabilities. What I found astonishing in a report I read actually several weeks ago, generally only 3% of people self-identify with a disability in a company. That's a really troubling number to me, because that's telling me from the data that people aren't feeling comfortable or valued in their companies to disclose their disability. So shifting gears on why corporations need to really care and focus more intentionally and inclusively on wellness and preventative care. While companies can show up to change policies and procedures, you can't fix people, right? They can, however, take the time to understand the needs and wants of employees, to understand how they can increase levels of engagement, especially through wellness and preventative care. So people who feel like they belong, remember this concept of belonging I brought up? They show higher levels of engagement, leading to increased productivity, increased ROI. And companies really have to stop and ask, and this is from an inclusive design perspective, where are the barriers? Where are the frictions for your employees that lie with respect to their needs, their wants, their desires, and their access needs, right? So many of us think, sense, and move differently. And we really need to be focused on this from the corporate perspective so people can be more successful in their day jobs. So by creating a safe space to listen, that's when you can really see where the friction arises, where there's space where we need to course correct as organizations to reduce exclusion in the digital space, physical space, cultural space, and in companies. So from a personal life story, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where friction was created for me in the corporate world. So I broke my neck in 2010, leaving me a C6 quadriplegic. I spent the better part of 6 years in and out of hospitals with tremendous amount of medical complications. And back then, the concept of work from home and virtual work wasn't center stage at the time. And I had been and I continue to be a day trader trading financial assets, but that was really only my mode of financial freedom. And I was not able to get government benefits of any kind. Well, I switched careers several years ago to corporate disability strategy consulting in the onset of the pandemic and having this access to work from home. And what's really interesting is when I decided to apply for corporate jobs in diversity, equity, inclusion as a manager, as a director, I live and breathe this every single day. And I didn't have the background of the corporate background, but that didn't seem to matter because I kept getting invited to interviews and I would make it up to the 5th and 6th interview where I meet with the director. And then something really interesting happened. That conversation at the end when they were talking about benefits and I finally brought up my access needs. What do I need? And as a C6 quadriplegic, I'm paralyzed from the chest down and I have paralyzed hands, but with the right technological setup, I'm just as effective and efficient as working as anyone else. I'm actually more effective and efficient because I have to strategically plan my day out each and every day. And finally, I kept getting these rejections 9, 10, 11, 12. And it started to always happen after that conversation about my access needs. So while I can't prove discrimination on behalf of these corporations, there was a pretty solid pattern. So this created a serious friction and barrier, which propelled me to work as a consultant, which I love what I do now because I actually ironically now work with some of those corporations as a consultant who originally rejected me, right? But this was a serious challenge for me with accommodations because they didn't know how to ask the right questions. And I told them there are certain hours for me as a quadriplegic where I work 10 to 12 hours a day, but I don't always work it at a standard 9 to 5 because I have to take care of my life and work with caregiving and so forth. So they didn't work with me. They didn't make me feel like I belonged or that they even had a strong plan for inclusion, despite their website with the lip service saying that they're inclusive. But in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are all finding from a global perspective, and this is slowly starting to shift and we're slowly starting to move the needle, but it's about gender, it's about race, it's about sexuality, and disabilities just frequently getting left out of the conversation. So the question remains, how do we really care? How do we move the dial? How do we change this? Well, from a wellness perspective, it's kind of a multi-step process. One, you have to think about your personal self-care. So what are you doing every day as a human being to feel engaged, to do better at your day job, to feel more engaged with your family? Are you doing yoga, meditation? Are you managing stress? How do you do this on a personal level? For me personally, in my workday, I get up at 5 a.m. in the morning because I have about 2 hours of caregiving to do before I can even get up to my computer screens for my work. I work all day, but then about 3 p.m., I suffer from very severe chronic nerve pain, which kind of feels like burning pins and needles in my body 24/7. And unfortunately, it is a side effect of spinal cord injury when you're quadriplegic. So I down tools for about 2 hours and I work with my caregivers, some exercise and so forth. And then I'm physically in my bed for multiple spinal surgeries. I have a lot of pain as well. And I have a little table desk with a laptop and I continue working until 10 p.m. But I am completely out of pocket from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. each day. And these are the accommodations I need in my personal life to do the best job that I can do on a daily basis. So you have to ask yourself, what works for you? So shifting gears now to a professional concept of self-care and working with organizations. It's not just about equitable pay amongst underrepresented groups, just as an example, although this is critical component for any organization to focus on. Thinking about wellness for employees, this needs to be integrated into the DEI roadmap strategy, really to create an inclusive culture. It's not just about getting the job done, but about working with your employees holistically and collaboratively and inclusively, and listen to them to create a warm and welcoming environment. So you really have to look at, who are your employees? Are they mothers, people with physical disabilities? Are they individuals who celebrate religious holidays that need to be recognized that may not be mainstream? So as leaders in a nation, we also have to look at biases. So what stereotypes are you holding that are leading to these biases, leading to discrimination? So when you think about stereotypes, you think about it's an attitude you hold, and a bias, it's a belief you hold, and discrimination is the action you take against that. And oftentimes, and this goes into psychological training of unconscious bias training, a session and for another time, but we really have to look and examine with our senior leaders how this is affecting our wellness and preventative programs that we're offering at organizations. For example, with working mothers, right? There's a stereotype just because they need a flexible work schedule to take care of their children, that does not make them any less capable of their jobs. There's been a stigma surrounding working mothers for so many decades. This is changing, fortunately, and it's the forefront nowadays, especially with work from home. As human beings, we each have different needs that require different strategies for wellness and self-care. As organizations, we have to be flexible. How do we do this? Well, data. We have to start with data. We need to collect data, qualitative and quantitative, in a very safe and inclusive way to understand the needs of our employees as it relates to wellness and care. One organization I consult for, Open Inclusion, we focus on inclusive research for people with disabilities. So we work with large corporate brands who are trying to improve a product or a service or a digital space for people with disabilities. And we do this in such a way that we make sure all the information and focus groups and surveys, they're accessible. But we have to ask that question. We don't always know the access needs and the accommodations that people with disabilities need. For example, people with mobility impairments, one person may need accessible Zoom links. Another person might find Microsoft Teams better. You can't just lump all the access needs and say people with mobility impairments need A, B, and C. People who are deaf or hard of hearing need these accommodations. You have to ask the question. And with, inclusively designed surveys and focus groups and really working with senior leaders and employee resource groups to bring attention to them, to bring light to what we need to do to bring our authentic selves to work, to feel safe. This is all to reduce workplace burnout. So these efforts have to come from the top down and the bottom up collaboratively together. So I love research. I work on numbers, but understanding that there's a delicate balance and how you collect this data and how you analyze it, that can be very tricky. And that's where you bring in data scientists and psychologists. There's a new research report from WorkHuman Gallup poll, and I was reading it the other day. And it's on employee wellness, that employee wellness has a significant hand in reducing levels of burnout and better social well-being, higher levels of belonging, and increased feelings of thriving. And the numbers were, it was a very long article, but there were a couple key statistics I found really, really interesting that have a demonstrable impact on the physical health and the healthcare costs that employees incur as well. So some of these top statistics from this report, it was in 2023, said that nearly 9 out of 10 employees consider the benefit packages when evaluating an employer. More than half of Gen Zers and millennials consider wellness programs extremely important when they're looking at jobs. When it comes to retaining talent, 67% of employers who work for organizations with wellness programs, they like their jobs more, and they're likely to recommend them to their company. This one I found particularly interesting, and I'm going to read this because it's important. The cost of voluntary turnover due to burnout is 15 to 20% of payroll budgets each year. So what does that mean? That means employees' well-being amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars annually. So if those numbers are not eye-popping enough, there's $20 million of an opportunity lost for every 10,000 workers due to the low well-being, injury, and lack of performance. This translates, and I promise this is one of the last numbers, this translates up to $322 billion that's cost global organizations in turnover and loss of productivity because of low well-being and employee burnout. So employees are 2 times as likely to report having experienced a loss of gratitude than the previous day. About 40% are likely to report having experienced stress, worry, sadness, and this all translates into a bottom line when you're looking at senior leaders and C-suite executives. So this, I mean, if this doesn't pop out at you to pay attention, then we have a challenge. You know, employees that have a lack a strong sense of belonging, they're 12 times as likely to be disengaged and 5 times as likely to be looking for a new job. So the research really goes on and on. I really don't think I need to hammer that down anymore. And you can read the very long paper from WorkHuman and Gallup as well. So when I'm now thinking about specific programs, let's talk about that. What are some specific wellness programs that have worked very well? I'm a big believer in not recreating the wheel. Let's not reinvent it. Let's just perfect it. So you can take programs from other organizations that are doing well and producing research and data on this. I've come up with about 13 just off the top of my head that I think are pretty low-hanging fruit, but they have to be designed cohesively and collaboratively with management, directors, senior leaders, ERGs. Scheduling annual exams. This one should be pretty self-evident. Incentive wellness programs actually is very interesting. My husband worked for a corporation and he didn't want to get engaged in it, but it was going to save us $1,200 a year. And they had this wonderful app, and it was a wellness program where you basically collected points. So you could dive into a therapy session, you could join a marathon, you could stretch in your chair, and you just had to log in the different wellness activities, whether you went to yoga. And it was very cool because then it saved $1,200 each year on his health plan. And I actually engaged in it more than he did, but I just thought it was so well designed. It was on an app. You could also access it from a desktop, but these are the kind of programs I'm talking about. Offering regular mental wellness programs, such as access to therapists. I am a huge believer in therapy. I think just as if kids in middle school are taught about math and geography, I think it should be a life requirement that everyone has a therapist, because we all have our challenges in life, and speaking to a third party each week is, I just think, good practice in life. Meditation time. I engage in meditation every day. Sometimes I don't have 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but I have wonderful little apps on my phone that organizations can provide to employees as well. And sometimes literally taking 5 minutes for meditation, this actually has a direct physiological impact on your sympathetic nervous system. In short, what this means is you reduce inflammation in your body just even from 5 minutes of meditation and closing your eyes in between Zoom calls and simply just breathing. Also having on-site physical fitness centers. This is tricky. I've seen a handful of corporate fitness centers before, and none of them have adaptive exercise equipment for people with physical mobility impairments. So you have to be very careful to make sure that these fitness centers are really accessible for all of your employees. And that is only, you're not going to know that unless you ask the question and build a coalition within your organization. Quit smoking programs, right? Transit incentive programs. Some employees, if you have a hybrid work situation and you need employees who have significant disabilities, you need to have a program where they can get to work safely and feel comfortable. Accessible outdoor adventures. I have a dear friend of mine, and she works for a very large tech organization, and she's blind, and they had an outdoor adventure, and she felt very excluded because they didn't have any program set up for people with significant disabilities. So you want to make sure that all of your programs are inclusive. And talking about programs that are inclusive, when a boss invites a handful of employees out for drinks, as an example, this can be really challenging. This excludes so many employees who don't drink, who observe different religious practices, as an example. And there's direct evidence that there are a higher rate of advancements in work for employees that hang out with their bosses. So I always find it's very mindful to make sure you have inclusive after work activities if you're going out with senior management or middle management. Financial education incentive programs. What are you doing to advance inclusion with respect to promoting employees from allotting a certain financial amount or percentage of your budget to continuing education programs? Gym memberships. For example, if your in-house gym, if your corporation is fortunate enough to have one and they don't have an in-house gym, making sure to offer gym memberships to those who have outside facilities that they may feel more comfortable with and they feel that you care and that, a sense of belonging. Also support and community involvement outside of the office. I dedicate 20% of my week to paying it forward, human kindness, and nonprofit work. So, what is your organization doing? Because when you help other people, when I get up in the day as a C6 quadriplegic and I am working through having 24/7 hour care, people helping me get dressed, dealing with the pain, and so many other secondary complications, I find when I help another human being, which is my motto every single day, it actually has a direct impact on your emotional health as well. And then de-stressing activities, such as mindful meditation or Tai Chi techniques in the workplace. I have another friend who works for a very large tech organization, and they have a room, it's their yoga meditation room. And every few hours, folks go in there and they have different groups. Some folks like Tai Chi or a 5-minute mindful meditation, but it really does, like, it gets you out of your chair. And back pain is the number one cause of the number one cause in the United States of pain, period. So do you have the right cushions in your chair for your employees? Are you having them get up and move around throughout the day, even through a stretching technique? When I was flying, I lived in China for quite a while myself. In my teen years, my 20s, and after I broke my neck, I moved back there for spinal surgery. And on every single flight, the Chinese flight attendants, they would engage every few hours in different stretching activities on the plane. I've never seen that in the United States. I thought that was a very, very cool idea. And that's naturally to prevent blood clots from very long plane flights as well. So there's really something to fit every organization and their budget. Those are just a few ideas. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to giving your employees the autonomy to tell you what they need, not what you think they need, not just because you read a report and said, this organization offers so many gym memberships, which increase their productivity and mental wellness of their employees. That may not work for your organization. One size doesn't fit all. And the way to collect this data is through pulse surveys, engagement surveys, focus groups, right? So many people, as I mentioned, they think, move, and sense differently, and 80% of disabilities are unseen. So oftentimes you will find people, and I hear this all the time, people are suffering silently because they don't feel included or a sense of belonging in their organization. People with disabilities and all of your employees, they are their own best self advocates, but you have to engage them. You have to give them the safe space to tell you what is important to them. Sometimes it seems self-evident, but unfortunately in the corporate world, there's so many hierarchy levels, and a lot of employees don't feel comfortable even talking to middle management. It's not enough for a company to have the intent to make change, but these intentions, they have to lead to action and actionable outcomes, ultimately about meaningful and inclusive outcomes that are fostering this overall umbrella concept of belonging in your organization. This is going to require data, again, a topic for another time. And data doesn't exist to tell the whole story, but it is honestly a key foundational piece for change. So with that, I would love to open up the floor to questions. And I'm always here. I think, I grew up with a dad who said, we think with ideas, not information. And if you're an employee, say you're an employee in a resource group, and I'm coaching an employee resource group right now for a corporation, and they don't really know where to start. So, I advise them that you have to be your own investigative reporter. My dad was in publishing for decades. And if you don't have the data to sell a program, you have to be able to sell a story or an experience to senior management so you can collect the data later on, right? So with that, thank you so much for having me, and look forward to getting more involved.
Ellie, thank you so much for the thought-provoking discussion. There were so many little nuggets of information there that I'm sure everyone else in the audience, as well as me, will be certain to take back to our organizations. With that, we're going to pivot to Q&A session. For everyone in the audience, you can use the Q&A function to submit questions. While you're doing that, I'll begin with the first question, and then we'll move to audience. So Ellie, what advice do you give to those who aren't comfortable to self-identify and disclose disability, to feel more comfortable to ask for the access and accommodations needed?
That's a very great question. And a lot of people that I know who have disabilities, 80% unseen, they do not want to identify with the disability in their organization because they don't feel comfortable. And that's okay. But that still as an organization, you can still send out anonymous surveys, or focus groups, or anonymous. You can hire consultants that can speak with people and they can tell you what they need, and they don't have to identify with their disability, because the fact of the matter is a lot of people are not going to, because we are just not in a spot yet. This concept of DE&I, wow, it's full force now, and I'm on LinkedIn every day seeing jobs for diversity, equity, inclusion managers, directors, and so forth. It's still a very new concept, right? With respect to taking actionable steps over the last 5 to 10 years. So my advice would be, keep it anonymous so employees can feel comfortable telling you what they need.
Great, thank you. Beth, any questions from the audience?
Yes, so we have one, and this is a great question. What kinds of wellness programs would you envision for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, such as autism or other sensory processing disorders? Are there certain programs that you would recommend?
So I am the first to say, I don't know what I don't know. I don't pretend to be an expert in everything. I have many friends, and when I work with Open Inclusion, we work with a lot of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And again, we have to ask the right questions. What do they need? For example, just with hiring, Microsoft, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but with folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, they were trying to increase, not with a quota, with their number of employees in the organization. They were finding they were getting stuck in the interview process, where it was very black and it was very white, with people on the autism scale. And oftentimes when you're in the interview process, as an example, you get those gray questions. So they actually did away with their academy, and they created a program called, I'm not familiar with video games, but there's one called Minecraft. And so during the interview process, they created this virtual video game because it was it was a smoother process for people on the autism scale to be hired because they understood it, but they had to ask for it. So with respect to wellness programs, I couldn't specifically say because that's not my access need. But again, that's asking the question of what works for you.
Yeah, that's great. So, the other thing I want to mention, so I loved your comments about how you can't fix people, right? But you can listen to your employees. So what advice would you give? I know an important part of this is getting senior managers and executive level managers engaged in this conversation. So how can what would your message be to them in terms of how to better listen to employees in this space?
It's a very complicated question and a great one. And one challenge I see first and foremost is that the DEI departments are siloed, or they're thrown in the HR departments, and they're not given the autonomy to actually do their job. And some of the organizations I consult with, specifically with ERGs, they say they have buy-in from senior management, where a senior leader will say, yes, I support this, but they don't actually sit in on the ERG meetings. They don't actually work collaboratively with employees. And they say they have an open door policy, but they really don't, right? So that part is on senior leaders to really be authentic and say, I'm going to get involved. I'm not just going to sign a piece of paper and say, I support this DEI initiative, which I think is where a very big challenge lies. And the budget, it's about the budget. So a very big tech company, very familiar with a very good friend of mine. They have over 80,000 employees. And do you know their diversity, equity, and inclusion department? There's 7 of them. That's it for 85,000 employees. So we have to put our money where our mouth is and invest in these diversity, equity, and inclusion departments. And more importantly, get HR and DI to work cohesively, because oftentimes with HR, right, you have your HR systems and you have your data there and they don't want to share with the DEI. But how are we going to collect data and how are we going to impact change if we're not sharing information? Obviously, that doesn't, go against, violate any legal laws for that matter. And more, if you're not getting that data from the HR department, if the DI department has their budget, they can go collect their own data. And this does not have to be expensive, right? Again, pulse surveys, engagement surveys, small focus groups. But if people are afraid and organizations are afraid, hire an outside consultant that's non-threatening so employees feel comfortable speaking to a third party.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Great advice. So and another question, and you mentioned this, I know many of the companies we work with have business resource groups, right, or employee resource groups.
Mhm.
But often what we see is there's a low participation rate among employees in these groups. So what advice can you give to get more employees to join and participate with, in being a part of kind of that collective voice within a company?
That's a great question. A lot of it sometimes is coming down to a little bit of fun and education and awareness. So once a month, as an example, say in an ERG, hosting just an open forum with middle management, senior management, and having a conversation and having employees come in, whether it's a webinar or an in-person event or a meet and greet, or let's grab some pizza together, or let's do a yoga session together. But that, I find there's a lack of awareness of a lot of these employee resource groups as well. And more importantly, an employee resource group, whether it's for women, people of color, for disability, it should not just be siloed for people with disabilities. As an example, everyone needs to be encouraged, able-bodied people as well, or men in women ERGs, so they can learn.
Great. Chantal, I'm going to turn it back to you for the final question. I know we have to wrap up, but thank you so much, Allie. Great.
Okay, so thank you everyone for all the questions, and I know we could probably go on for a while, but unfortunately we have to go on.
Chantal, I do see some questions in the chat, so if someone emails to me, more than happy to email answers back on that personally afterwards as well, because there's some really great questions, but I know we're running out of time.
Okay, great. Yes, we'll do that. Thanks, Ali. Okay, so with that, I'd like to hand over to Shannon Swiger from Novant Health to take us through the second half of this meeting. Over to you, Shannon.
Thank you so much, Chantal, and thank you so much, Ali, for that illuminating conversation. We appreciate you sharing your expertise and your lived experiences with us. For this next portion of our Wellness at Work event today, we have a couple employers who have joined us and are going to share some comments with us about programs that they have. So first up, and I should stop and introduce myself, Shannon Swiger. I am Director of Internal Communications at Novant Health. I'm a co-leader of our Persons with Abilities Business Resource Group, and I am also really proud to be a board member for Disability in North Carolina. So for our employer videos that we're going to be sharing with you, first up, there's going to be 2 of them. First up, we have Taylor Warren from Novant Health, and then we'll share one from SAS. And after that, we're going to have some brief Q&A and conversation on the topics they're going to be sharing about. This first video here, as I mentioned, is from Novant Health, and it really talks about how we're putting our team members first. when it comes to focusing on the well-being of the members of our healthcare team. I'll turn it over to Taylor.
Hi, this is Taylor Warren, Director of Organizational Resiliency at Novant Health. I hope that you're well. We are a proud sponsor and really grateful for Disability in North Carolina. And I am a proud advocate of you, whoever you are, wherever you are watching this video. Thank you for your passion for mental health, well-being, and for human beings. So I'm going to share my screen and just offer a few things that Novant Health has been up to in recent years to care for our amazing healthcare team that does the work of caring for and healing other people all day, every day. So it really all starts with our well-being mission, our commitment to our people, to their health, to their well-being, their resiliency. We have to put that first because that's what they do for other people. So that's our commitment to them. We know this is an aspiration. We'll always have more to do as it relates to this, but this is the flag that we've put in the ground for them and for their health and well-being. We also believe at Novant Health that it takes a village mentality. Well-being takes a village. And the way that we do that is through our Thriving Together platform. It's a way of life at Novant Health. It is the central hub, the collective of care teams at Novant Health that are dedicated to supporting and caring for our people, the 37,000 strong across our footprint. So this ranges from our amazing EAP counselors to our spiritual care chaplains embedded in facilities across our footprint to our business resource groups like our Rebound and Addiction Stigma Elimination team, as well as our Persons with Disabilities group as examples. I represent the three on the right that are highlighted in green, our Office of Wellbeing and Resiliency, our Emotional Health Advocate team, or our Peer Connect movement, as well as our Mental Health First Aid training, which I'll share more about in a moment. One of our big focuses has been how do we make it as easy to access care and support, especially when it's not easy for our people? How can we have an easy button for when it's not easy? This QR code that you're seeing here and the website, novanthealth.org/thrivingtogether, is the main place that we do that. It's the one place people can go to find all the phone numbers, care teams, connection points for them, for their teams, even their loved ones. And so this information's everywhere throughout our organization. It's by team member entrances and exits and on flyers and in meetings, and we try to put it in as many places as possible and make it as normal as possible. Like, it is okay not to be okay. Well-being takes all of us. It takes a village, and however someone is doing, we want to care for them. If they're really struggling, if they're hurting, if they're hanging in there, or if they're doing well, but they want to be doing even better and they want to grow, we want to meet them wherever they are in the places that they are. This is the last thing that I'll share. Think of this as the menu, a number of different ways that people can plug into care and support for themselves, for their teams. And so two that I just want to spotlight are our Emotional Health Advocate team, the heart with an ear shape on it that ironically enough is at the heart of the slide. This really is how we make this work real for everyone within our organization and even beyond. So over the last 3 years, we have trained more than 600 of our team members in emotional health, how to have conversations with other people about well-being, how to grow in self-care, how to lean on others for care and support when you need it. This is our Emotional Health Advocate movement, and we have had more than 11,000 conversations in the last 3 years, half of which have been within the organization, half of which have been in the community. And I'm so proud of this team and for their leadership in this work. I'll also just spotlight our Mental Health First Aid training. This has been made possible in the years to come by some very generous grants and foundation support. to equip our team members with tools, education, confidence in having conversations around mental health, because it affects us all. And it gives us real skills for how do we identify early signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, worsening signs and symptoms, and even what do we do if we find ourselves in a crisis situation or conversation. So these are just a few things that we've been up to. I'd love to learn from each of you. We as an organization would love to learn from you. Thank you for your heart and for all that you're doing. And thanks for taking a few minutes to watch this video. Take care.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing about the Thriving Together platform. And we're going to have some questions for you. So be thinking, all of you out there in the audience, be thinking about what questions you want to share, and you can go ahead and enter those in. And next up, we have a video from SAS, from their Business Resource Group and Recreation Fitness Center. They work together to enhance the experience that individuals with disabilities have when leveraging their fitness programs.
Hi, I'm Simon Gardwell, SAS employee, disability and board member. In 2021, the RFC Recreational and Fitness Center and ABLE Employee Inclusion Group teamed up to find out what we were doing well about fitness, wellness, and the recreational experience at SAS and people with disabilities. The goal was to understand the collective experience and opportunities for us to enhance accessibility and inclusivity for the programs we offer. So what we discovered through a series of focus groups with diverse numbers of employees of different ages, genders, abilities, and fitness levels, and opportunities for improvement. So what are we doing well? Overall, the employee experience was well. The staff are very supportive and sensitive to individuals with needs and those with physical accommodations. We have a chairlift at the pool. You can call ahead and ask for accessories to be put beside the pool if you need them. The environment has accessible restrooms and an easy accessible shower and can accommodate a wheelchair. The programming already exists and is inclusive for people of all fitness levels. Where we can improve is the overall experience for people with hearing impairments, because the classes can be a bit loud. Going to the RFC can be intimidating for the first time and overwhelming for people with disabilities. The physical environment, navigating the locker room can be difficult, both for anyone, but people with mentally and physically challenges. The programming, offering more introductory level classes. So what are we doing about it? Trying to offer experiences for ways to introduce introductory level classes, the volume, offering a buddy system, tours, trying to enhance our locker rooms to be more accessible, providing one-on-one support. So this will be an ongoing thing that we can analyze and work together to make long-lasting improvements. So we also have a library of online videos that the Recreational and Fitness Center has done a great job. Currently, these programs are not captioned, but they offer options for people of all fitness levels and things like chair yoga, other wellness options that SAS has offered us. So there's great resources available to us. Later on in the program, you will be joined by Rebecca Allen, who was part of this journey. She'll be here for Q&A. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this experience.
Thank you so much for that great video. And I'm excited now to sit down with Rebecca and Taylor. And thank you both for joining us today. I loved the videos and really would love to learn a little bit more about what you highlighted in them. As a reminder to our audience members, we welcome questions from you too. So please feel free to enter those into the Q&A and we'll go through as many as we can get to. So Taylor, when I think of a first aid kit, I think of sports, and I love this concept, this idea of having a mental health first aid kit. Can you talk a little bit more about how how Novant Health got this idea up and running, and if this is something that's available to people beyond Novant Health?
Sure thing. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I agree with you, Shannon. I'm a sports fan as well and love the idea of first aid and how we can all get tools, education, confidence in this really important work that we all have to do of destigmatizing mental health and just caring for ourselves and for each other, because mental health affects us all. I would say at Novant Health, for us, it started years ago, probably about a decade ago, just putting a flag in the ground that like, this matters. This matters to us as an organization, to our executive team, to leaders everywhere. And it's part of who we are as a company. It's how we do the work of healthcare, is we take a stand for our people and we put their health, their well-being first, so that they can do that every day for other people, because that's what they do when they show up. And so I think it starts with that. And then to Allie's point and her talk, which Allie, thank you so much for all the insights earlier. I'm a researcher as well, so you were speaking my love language. I think we have to have data, like Allie said, around where people are hurting within the organization. We know people are suffering everywhere, and that life brings great things and it brings hard things, and in our industry of healthcare in particular, it can come with an extra weight to it. So data listening really helps guide that commitment to our people and get care proactively where it's most needed, but also to create programs that meet the need, and to Allie's point, that aren't just what we think people need, but what they're actually telling us will make a difference for them. So I would say it starts with just putting a flag in the ground that it matters, and then listening and responding with action, as Allie said. And then lastly, on mental health first aid specifically, this is available to our team members, and it's also available to community members. So any of you could contact me if you're a Novant Health person or interested in what we're doing for our team specifically, but you can also visit the website of the National Council for Mental Health, Mental Wellbeing, and you can register for a class in your area. You can search by zip code and see upcoming classes. There are free reduced cost classes. It's very affordable, and amazing tools given in a one-day class format that you can find on the Mental Health First Aid website.
That's great. Thank you for that, Taylor. And we will share links afterwards for anybody that wants access to any of these resources. So Rebecca, I have a question for you. I love how you partnered with the fitness center to really evaluate what was needed for those who have a disability. Have you seen any increase in usage since making the changes to the Recreation Fitness Center?
I believe that we haven't collected data on that yet specifically. However, I think some of the people that participated in the focus groups and interviews, it helped establish a relationship. And that's really what this is all about. It's about conversations and relationships. And it has helped us establish relationships and being willing to ask questions and not know the answers, and to have this ongoing dialogue with people with disabilities or the people that are using our programs, and then how might we enhance our programs or our facilities to better serve them, and to create possibilities that would inspire them to use our programming and use our facilities. And I think one of the things that we have done and been able to do since we started the conversation was to get a couple pieces of equipment, and I have noticed people using those, and to literally get access to all our buildings, to have accessible entrances. That was a huge venture, and we finally were able to do that for all of our buildings. Yeah, to answer that question, I don't have the data to back it up, but anecdotally, I think that the relationship building, I know for sure, has been a huge part of it. giving people comfort to ask for what they need. I think that's a huge part of this puzzle we're weaving together, I guess, the fabric of it.
Absolutely. That's huge. And anecdotal, that still counts as data, right? You're still getting feedback. So that's fantastic to hear. And this question, I'd love to hear Taylor and Rebecca from you both, but can you speak a little bit about, any specific programming or offering for folks with autism or ADHD, anyone who may be neurodiverse?
I'll start, and I'll use another line that Ali mentioned. So I'm not the expert in this within my organization, not even close, but I will follow up on this. I know a number of people who I have a hunch know the answer to this, but I will say this question, I saw it come through. It's close to my heart. I have two daughters, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we've been on a journey with both of them with sensory processing challenges. And we do not have any diagnoses yet for them, but it's been a journey. And I've met a lot of other parents and individuals who've been on this journey as well, or that are on the autism spectrum. So I'm personally, I just have a heart for this question, and I don't know the answer to it, but my contact information is just my name, taylor.warren@novanthealth.org. And whoever asked that question, I will commit to getting you that answer. Thank you for asking.
And yes, thank you, Taylor, and Ali for setting the example to acknowledge that I too don't have the foundational knowledge to speak about this, but we have offered something that is related to breathing and the sensations of breathing. And I think that's one thing that many people can identify with, although this is certainly an area it's a gap in learning. It helps us identify a gap where we might need to invest more resources. So thanks for that question, whoever offered that.
One initiative that does just come to mind, Ali's keynote brought it up earlier, is what we call our emotional health advocate team. I alluded to it in our video, and it really has a heart that's so similar to what Ali put to words, that this work happens one conversation at a time, and it happens when we just commit to doing it together, that no one of us has all the answers, and that we can lean on each other when we need to. And this emotional health advocate team is one of the ways we do that at Novant Health. We create a platform for our team just to have conversations with each other, to grow in their own well-being, resiliency, mental health, and to have a platform to support others, so they can reach out and say, hey, I want to talk to a peer. And we connect them in a way that works for them with someone they're comfortable chatting with. And they can talk to someone who's not going to try to fix them. They're just going to listen and come alongside them and offer empathy and hope, and just listen. So I feel like that work is just so valuable, because it's led by our team members for our team members, one conversation at a time, and it meets people in all different circumstances, facing all different kinds of things where they are. So I thought I'd just highlight that one as well.
Thanks for calling that out, Taylor. So if we don't have any more audience questions, I just have one more question for each of you. And Rebecca, I'll start with you. What does wellness at work mean to you personally?
It is, I'd say, the foundation of why I come to work. My role is connected to giving people opportunities to be well in their bodies. As I work as a trainer and a wellness program coordinator here at the Recreation and Fitness Center, and personally living with mental illness, I need this just as much as the people I give it to. And I think I teach what I need to know and what I need to kind of hold close to me throughout my daily life and my job. So it has special meaning to me, personally and professionally, because wellness is what I do at work. And so practicing it, like setting up my daily schedule and being strategic about being well, helps me to support others in their journey to be well as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. You're a great example for us all. And Taylor, how would you answer that? What does wellness at work mean to you?
I love Rebecca's answer. Only thing I would add is just having the permission to be human. One of the things that we talk about in healthcare is the people that do the work of healthcare are amazing. Like they do hard, heroic things every day. And I don't think this is just unique to people that work in healthcare. I think it's a part of the human spirit. Like we can just do amazing, hard things. And I think we just have to remember we're human as well. We're human. And I think that's what wellness at work looks like to me, is holding like the best parts of us, how amazing and awesome and gifted we are, along with our humanity and the permission to feel, and just to not be okay, and to lean on someone else when you need to. Sometimes the best act of self-care is to just own, like, I need to lean on somebody else right now. Like I need help. I need to talk to someone. I need care. So sometimes the most courageous act of self-care is saying you need someone to care for you.
I think you both offered some great advice. I know I've learned a lot. I hope you all have learned a whole lot today too. And in closing, I just want to thank everyone for joining Disability in North Carolina's Wellness at Work event today. Disability in North Carolina is a membership organization and could not offer programs without the support of our members and sponsors. So please consider joining us if you haven't already. And you can learn more about us at di-nc.org. We also invite you to mark your calendars for July 26th and join us. Again, this year, we're going to be hosting our 33rd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act passage. So we'll have a great virtual event for that. We're going to have some more details coming out about that. You can, again, check out di-nc.org. You can also get signed up for our newsletter to keep in the know about the latest activities. We'll also have a fall conference being held on October 12th. And I had the opportunity to participate last year. It was a great program, really worth the day, some great networking opportunities too. So again, at di-nc.org. And before we end our program, I'm really excited. I want to invite Rebecca Allen to please lead us. Super excited about this, a 5-minute breathing and stretch exercise. And so thank you. And now I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca.
Thanks, Shannon. And I'm really glad to be able to do this. I'd invite you to kind of get comfortable as we start this experience. And I encourage you to lean into what sensations feel good, just to be curious about sensations in your body. And we're going to start stretching the muscles and around our ribs by simply breathing. So if you're comfortable, you can keep your eyes open, or you might want to even close your eyes or soften what you see. Maybe you want to imagine something. And then just tune into the sensation of breathing. Maybe you hear the sound of your breath, or you sense your body expand and contract. Maybe you notice a rise and a fall. Breath is the movement that fuels all our other movements. And now if your eyes are closed, you can just softly open them and begin to move the muscles around your eyes, your face. This is a chance to put all the emotions on your face at once. You may open and close your mouth or stretch your jaw. It's fun to just stick your tongue out. Sometimes we get too serious. I like to be silly. Laughing is a great way to exhale a lot of excess stress. And now begin to play and move into your shoulders. So it might feel nice to roll your shoulders up and back or forward. To roll your head around side to side. And in honor of World Turtle Day, we're going to bring our shoulders up towards our ears like a turtle, kind of moving into its shell, and then let that go. Do that a couple times, bringing your shoulders up towards your ears, and then you might let out a sigh. Try that again. One more time. Pulling in rich oxygen and then letting out anything that's stale. And then open your arms as you kind of stretch your chest. We get kind of stuck in space. And then give yourself a hug. Drop your chin towards your chest. And do that again. Open up. Shine your heart forward. This is my Care Bear stare for those of you who know the Care Bears. And then round your back. They're a fun little team of bears. And they love colors. Open up one more time. Open the chest, span through the collarbone, lift the chin, and then round out. Give yourself a hug and pulse here, stretching the back of your neck. Separate your shoulder blades and breathe a little deeper. And now release. Think of sitting up a little taller as you sweep one arm over and stretch through the side of your body. You can let your head fall from side to side. Breathing into the side of your body as if you could move air directly into that space, and then switch sides and reach the other arm over. Feeling the other side of our bodies. We're not symmetrical in any way, shape, or form, so it's normal to feel different on each side. And then do that one more time, just leaning over. I like to drape my hand on my head and give myself a little head massage. And just switch sides. And then lift up, release that. And I'm going to scooch back. We're going to take, use your hands to pull your leg up. And then if it's comfortable, you can cross your ankle over your knee. And then use your hand and just move through your ankle. Just becoming aware of your leg, your toes, your feet. And aware of your hips. You might even place a hand on your hip. And slowly lifting that up, using the hands to place the leg back down, and then just shifting sides to lift the leg up. And if it's comfortable, cross the ankle over. You can also cross down low at the ankle rather than at the knee. And then just move through the foot, using the hand to kind of guide a little circle. Then going in the other direction. If you have your shoes off, this is a great time for a foot massage. And now lifting up and then landing back down. And we're going to end with a big opening up to new practices, and then bringing our hands together just to give ourselves appreciation for showing up today, and a little bit of thank yous for all the people that are joining to make this day's event possible. So thanks.